Hi, this is Greg Marshall, and today we're going to talk about how to close more personal training sales. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. First, you want to focus on the emotions. So have questions that are designed to provoke an emotion. Some examples of that are questions such as, how will you feel when you lose the weight? How will your family and friends feel or perceive you when you lose the weight? In what ways will your life change by hitting your fitness results? Those are kinds of questions that really provoke an emotion and will make the client feel something. And that's the goal. If you want to be able to close more personal training sales, you want to make sure that the clients are feeling and having high levels of emotion. If you don't get them to get emotionally engaged, you will have a much harder time closing the sale. So make sure you have questions designed to provoke an emotion. I would actually give you a tip, which is go ahead and put together at least a minimum of 5 pre-scripted questions that you can put together in order to get an emotion out of a client. You want to make sure when you're doing your presentations, you're working so hard to get the person in front of you. Make sure you're maximizing your opportunities by having the questions designed to make sure that you are maximizing the closes and getting that emotions that you need to get out of them. Next, you want to pay attention to emotional triggers or words. A big mistake trainers make when they're doing their presentations and selling their personal training sessions is when a client tells you something such as an emotional trigger or words, you want to make sure you're staying focused and staying on that topic, because the more emotions that they show and the more words that they use, that is your opportunity to really expand on how the personal trainer will be able to help them feel a certain way, whether that's making them feel better than what they are or thinking in the future of how they will feel by going ahead and hiring you as a trainer. So pay very close attention to the emotional triggers or words that clients use. Some of those words are self-esteem, confidence, hopeless, frustrated. Those are the types of words that you want to hear, and when you hear them, you want to make sure you're expanding on them. So the next tip is to stay on the subject of emotion and amplify. Once you get these emotional triggers or words, you want to stay on them. My rule with them mentally is I try to stay on them as long as I can, whether that's 3 to 5 minutes per emotion, and I keep asking why. So if they want to increase their confidence and they're giving me a hint that they're not very confident right now, I will continuously ask questions such as, why do you want to be more confident? And what ways do you think getting more confidence will change your life, and why? And just keep asking why and digging as deep as you possibly can and amplify it. A good way to amplify the emotion is once you bring up the subject and they start engaging in it, you want to ask the questions of what currently do they feel right now, and why is it so painful or frustrating or discouraging, and go ahead and paint me a very detailed picture of how this has affected your life since you've had these problems, or if it's affected your entire life, and sit there and hear their entire story and encourage them to let it all out. It may have been years or never where they've had an opportunity to just have someone focusing on them and asking them how they feel. So selling personal training is a lot like a therapy session. If you sit down and ask as many questions as you can, you're going to get the best results possible. Now, the next thing is you want to tell stories to get them to relate. So tell a story of another client that you have that fits their particular profile. When I say this, this just means it's very simple. If you have someone sitting in front of you, and let's say she's a 30-year-old woman with 2 kids and 30 pounds overweight, you want to share a story of another client you have or have had that fits that exact profile. And the reason you want to do that is because you want that person, that client sitting in front of you, to picture themselves as that individual as you're telling them the story. This will increase their engagement and make them really emotionally connected to what you're trying to demonstrate. And this is one of the strongest things you can do to increase your closing percentage, is to tell stories. Everyone likes a good story, especially if it's someone who has a problem and wants to overcome this problem. They definitely want to hear the story about how someone similar to them who fit their exact profile overcame the obstacles and now they're successful. So make sure you tell a story of another client you have that fits their profile. Next, open up first about your story. What this means is, if you open up first, sometimes you'll have a client sit in front of you and they won't necessarily open up and tell you their exact goals of what they want to accomplish or some of their problems because they're embarrassed. Many times when you set an appointment with a client, they may have never seen you before, never met you, or maybe they've had very minimal exposure. They can be shy and embarrassed about what some of their real, true problems and concerns are. So you want to start it off with telling your story first so that they can see that you're trying to engage with them and they're not alone. You too also have had problems in the past. And when you say your stories, you typically want to, if they're not telling you what their goals are, you want to do your best to guess mentally what that is and tell a story that hits that angle. So if you think that they may want to date more or they may want to fit better in their clothes, then when you say your story, you want to make sure that it goes along with those types of goals so they can relate. It's all about having the client feel connected and feeling like they can relate with the story or what you're trying to tell them. So make sure you open up first, particularly if you have a closed client that's coming in and they're not opening up and telling you everything that you need to know. Next, be vulnerable. The more vulnerable you are during the sales process, the more they will listen. So you have to think from the client's perspective. When they're coming to meet you, there are already these beliefs that they have of what a personal trainer is, what a personal trainer does. And not only that, your personal appearance will give off a certain vibe as well. So you want to be very conscious of what you're giving off and how you're giving it off when the client comes in. So by being vulnerable, you want to actually call out some of the perceptions that they may have about you. So an example would be, there's a lot of people who think personal trainers are exactly like Jillian Michaels or someone that they see on TV that's a drill sergeant and just yells at them. That actually intimidates a lot of people. So when a client comes in for that free training session or for you to demonstrate what you have to offer, they're already thinking about you possibly or most likely will be an individual who's going to be yelling and embarrassing them in front of everyone. And it's your job to make sure that you bring that up early and tell them that if this is their perception, that's not reality. This is how you really are. I'm going to educate you and help you out so you feel comfortable when you're in the gym. That's a good example of being able to be vulnerable and call out some of the perceptions that the client may have about you already. Next, you want to be able to control body language and your words. So the first thing is you want to have empathy. The more empathy you have, the better it is. And the reason that is when someone comes in and they're opening up to you and they're telling you their problems and their concerns, the last thing they want to do is hear someone say, hey, that's not too bad for you, or someone who's not feeling their pain. So you want to be able to get yourself in an emotional state to be more empathetic so that you can go ahead and relate with the client. This is all under your control. You have to just sit there and truly care. Hopefully you became a personal trainer because you want to help change people's lives. So having empathy and showing your true colors when they're talking to you is going to be very important. So make sure you have empathy and you're showing and demonstrating it to them, and that they genuinely feel that you feel their pain. Next, make sure that you appear confident. This is tough for a lot of personal trainers in the beginning, or if they're just learning how to sell. They have a tendency to look nervous or too worried and concerned. And what this will do is it'll actually make the client be worried and concerned because you're giving that off. So you want to make sure that you appear confident. Some of the best ways to do that is to make sure you're making eye contact. And when you're saying to the client what they should do, you're saying it firmly and convinced that that is the best solution for them. So you want to make sure that you appear confident and that there's no shame in what you're offering and what you have to do to help them. And lastly, always clarify their obstacles and follow up with a solution. So when they're speaking with you, you want to make sure that you understand their true obstacles, what they're trying to accomplish, and then you want to follow up with a solution. So an example would be if their obstacle is they're really struggling with nutrition and they want to lose weight, you want to make sure you're asking questions such as, okay, so you need help with your nutrition and you want to lose weight, and you want them to clarify. The reason why you want them to clarify is so that they know you're listening and that you truly care about helping them overcome their obstacles, and this develops very strong trust. So make sure you clarify what their obstacles are and always follow up with a solution. Now, if you need any help on learning how to sell personal training, feel free to send me an email at greg@fatour.co. I'll be more than happy to help you out. We can go over a consultation and I can teach you the many different ways there are to sell personal training. So make sure you email me and I'd be more than glad to help you out. Hopefully you enjoyed this presentation. You have a great one.